the thing that's always going to win out every single time is idea. And if you can be an idea person and you can take the risk of putting your ideas into your photography, this is how people will always come to you. It's always going to be that. It doesn't have to be you have to create something from nothing or that you've got to reinvent the wheel. It actually just needs to be that you do come loaded with ideas and you are willing to take the risk to show those ideas in front of your clients and friends.
I'm so excited to have Alan Clark here with us on the edit today. And Alan Clark has been a friend for, I think we just discovered, at least 18 years of mine. He lives in Nashville, Tennessee. And I am not only a fan of his artwork, I have learned a lot from him. He's even we've worked some together on a few different projects. So welcome, Alan.
Thank you guys so much.
You're welcome.
This is amazing.
So I'm going to give you a quick, brief introduction of his career. And I'm starting off by sharing two pieces that we have in our house. And these were actually both, one was a gift to me from Peter, my husband, and the other was a gift to Peter from me. So the first one, and this is what I love about Alan, is I'm going to share a little bit about he does commercial photography. You do fine art photography. You've done weddings, a little bit of everything. Your main focus has been commercial photography, but Alan always takes on these projects that really spark his interest. And I absolutely love that about you, because I think it's so important to keep yourself creative, to do something just because it's intriguing to you and not necessarily mean you have to make money from it. And maybe you do make money from it. So this first image I gave to Peter.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing.
Stormtrooper. So, and we had it, you can see it's signed. We got number 2, print 2, unfortunately.
I am nerding out. I am nerding out right now. I love it.
Yes. And so Peter had his little Stormtrooper figures put in there. And I would love for you to tell the story of that in a minute. Just stay intrigued to hear the story of the Stormtroopers. So I gave that to Peter. And then Peter gave me this print of Imogen Heap, who is a singer. And I absolutely love Imogen Heap. But when I actually fell in love with this photograph of her before I really listened to her music. And I just was like, I love the lighting. It looked painterly, that vintage sort of style, the softness, and I have a print of it. So, Alan,
that frame.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That is my short version of your career, which has expanded such a long time. And
I am so
I would
old.
love to. I know.
That's 100% what I heard too.
As they point with me, I apologize. No, it's a privilege.
Exactly.
Yes, it is a privilege. But I would love to hear you share about how you, I guess, even initially became interested in photography, and just a quick overview of how you would portray your career.
I like hearing others talk about it sometimes, only because it's more interesting. I don't feel like I do a good job of speaking on myself. And I know a lot of us probably suffer from the same thing. You do this amazing stuff, and you always say that photography is like the noblest of careers. And it's because, when a house burns, what's the first thing everybody's going into the house to grab? Their photos. And so to me, it's storytelling. It's reference points. It's such important photography because, people sometimes are no longer with us, and it's about relationships and all those types of things that are so, so important. So to me, I say that and I don't speak of my own photography well enough in that. And it's crazy, but I think it has a lot to do with just, even though I've worked with all this stuff and done all the great things and met all my goals and worked with celebrities and blah, 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 it gets to the point where you're just kind of like, is that what it's really all about? Because to me, I'm kind of more into the storytelling aspect of it. And how is this going to help someone, or how how does this help people? And I'm more interested in that than I am the fact that I've worked with so-and-so. And so I get embarrassed by it. It's silly, but I do. But I think for me, this whole thing started was because my mother was a terrible photographer. And so when you get the family photos back, this is what you'd see.
Yes. Yes. Love it.
And I used to make like all the time. And I was like, Mom, look, I made the joke of we just thought we had a bald uncle that just showed up in photos all the time. And it was just my mom's finger.
Yeah. If you're listening and you didn't see that, it was fingers in the view of, yes.
Yeah. And that's what she did. She literally would it would look like claws the way she did it. She would literally just grab the camera from the front part of it and photograph everything with her claws over the top. And then half the time she was that, and the other half the time she was like cutting heads off. So it was like, I look great in that photo, Mom, or just like, it was just always cutting our heads off, fingers in the way. And we made so much fun of her. She just finally just handed the camera over to me and was like, why don't you do this then? And I was like, thank you for giving the camera. We'll actually see us. And that's the whole point of photography is to see us.
I love that. I love that. Yep.
So yeah, that's kind of how it started. And I know I make fun of her for this. And if she were alive, God rest her soul, she would laugh too, because it was definitely a laughing matter and not us being mean to each other or anything like that. Cause we loved, we just had a good time, and that was kind of part of it. But yeah, that was how it started for me. Then cut to my mom again, me getting a job. Like when I was 15, I wanted to get a camera. All of my friends were musicians, and I felt like I love music and I play music, but I just didn't feel like I was good enough. And I didn't feel like I could, I don't know. It just didn't burn in me. It didn't burn in me. Music did, or at least playing it. It burned in me going to it, listening to it, having my friends be in bands, but it just didn't burn in me to do it myself. And then I picked up the camera, and I say this all the time. It's in a lot of my, profiles and stuff like
Your
that.
Instagram
I say,
bio.
when I picked up a camera, it just made sense to me. And that is 100% true. And it was like, wow, it just made sense. And so I worked all summer when I was 15, and can't believe it's back when things cost $3 or stuff like that. It would take you all summer to get a $200. You know what I mean? And so I got I don't remember how much it was. It must have been between 160 and 180. And I bought this camera right here. Hold on.
Yes, I love that you still have it. Oh my gosh.
Oh, look at that.
Beautiful.
It's a Minolta XG9. I accidentally, when I'd started my career, when I was actually shooting in the studio and had, clients and all this type of stuff, one day I was just like, I'm just going to sell a bunch of my vintage gear. And I took it over to Dury's, which was our, pro shop in town at the time. And I sold it to Sam. And then on the way to the studio, I had this eureka moment of, what are you doing? And I ran up into the studio, and I called Sam. I was like, Sam, don't sell it. What was I thinking?
Yeah.
And he goes, well, you better get over here, because the 50 millimeter lens had already sold in the time that it took me to drive 7 minutes from the studio.
Wow.
From the pro shop to the studio. And so he said, I'll hold it. And then I went back, and it was just the camera body only. And I had to buy this later, this 50 millimeter lens. So it was, I'm glad I went and got it. That would have been a terrible, that would have been a regret for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Really quick. I love it so much that my dad had a Minolta, and that was my first camera to photograph with too.
Really?
That was, and I feel like I have not seen a Minolta in years. I don't actually remember my dad's when, but there you go. Yeah. My dad's saying,
how old is your dad?
He is 81. Yeah.
Okay. So he would have had this one, or the brand. There was, so I can usually figure out how old someone, I'm not even kidding, parent is by the camera that they used.
Oh, wow.
And so, everyone after me, so if they were, I don't know, 40 something, more than likely it was the X900 series. And if they were your dad's age, it was the XT series, which is probably before me. So I usually can kind of figure out which Minolta camera it is. Do you still have that camera?
It's probably at my parents' house somewhere, because my dad was older when they had me. He was 40. Sorry if anybody out there can hear my daughter, by the way. She's just right there homesick today, and I hear some giggling from Bluey happening. Anyways, But yeah, so he would have had that camera right about the time that he was about 40, 41, because that's when I was born.
That's
and
so cool.
everything was on there, and it was all slide film. My dad was very much into slides. He developed his own slides, and that was how we did our family movie night. But same thing, he would take some photos, and we'd all make fun of him for his thumb being in the photo. And
you guys know how difficult it is.
Same thing.
Do you know how difficult it is to develop slide film? That is insane. Like
my dad, it was a passion.
That was insane.
He loved it.
Yeah, that's insane. I've done black and white, I've done color negative film, but man, slide film. If it was one of the few things with slide film, if it was off even like maybe 1 or 2 degrees in the bath or whatever it was going through, the fix or whatever it was going through, or the bleach, it would just ruin it. So you had to really know what you're doing to not just shoot with slide film, but to also develop slide film. It was insane. And it was just too much stress for me. I was like, no, I'm not doing this. So your dad was and probably still is a boss. Let's be honest.
What an artist.
He's pretty good.
That is awesome. So I'm curious, Alan, if you can share about how you actually got started doing commercial photography. And kind of, I was thinking about this too, because I don't necessarily want this to be a whole gear episode. However, I'm curious, when you started doing commercial photography, were you shooting film or digital by that point?
When I started, I had used film for years. And in fact, I think I used it through the first 14 years. Now I've done photography a total of 30 to 31 years. But I did film for the first 14. So the first 14 were film. And then the last, I guess it was almost split almost in half. The last 16 to 17 years has been digital. There was a little overlap where I was kind of still shooting both. I would use both on a project, and then people wouldn't want to pay for the film anymore. They just stopped wanting to pay for it. And I was like, okay, well, that's one reason I'm not going to use it anymore, because I'm not paying for it.
Yeah.
Unless they requested the film look or whatever, I wouldn't use it and haven't. In fact, donated almost all of my photography equipment and film cameras to my university, which is Freed-Hardeman University. They've got an amazing photography program there now. It's getting to be one of the best, because my friend, Judd Davis, is the head of the whole department, and he went to SCAD and just made it better. So he's literally taking everything he's learned from me, himself, and SCAD and dumped it into this program, which is not terrible. And you can actually,
say the name of it again.
The name of the university is called Freed, F-R-E-E-D. So it's like two people's names, Freed-Hardeman University.
Awesome.
It's a liberal arts university and smaller college. Erin, sort of like Lipscomb, and David Lipscomb in Nashville. But it's just crazy that they have an amazing photography department. And I guess just by default, I kind of helped start it with my friend Judd Davis, and it's turned into a really decent, I'm so academic.
Awesome.
I'm so academic. Look at me. Look, I got books on my shelf. There's one right there.
Yeah.
Erin was like screaming. She was like, I don't see it. I don't think so. And it's a photo book. So, take it easy, Al.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered the question. Did I answer the question?
I guess. Okay. Well, just how did you get into specifically commercial? Like, what made you decide to go that route as opposed to any other route?
I think
there's so many ways you can go with photography. Yeah.
I know. And it's so funny because you can say that you're a photographer and that's still a very general term, and I think I saw what I didn't want to do. And the only reference point I had was the little town that I grew up in, which was little back then, but until Taylor Swift ruined it, is Hendersonville, Tennessee. And so when I'm around the world now, I will literally say I'm from Taylor Swift's hometown. And because they won't have any reference point for what I'm talking about unless it's T-Swizzle. So, that's how I introduce it now. But I come from that hometown, and there was just, same thing, small town, usually, wedding photographers and family photography and stuff like that. It wasn't that they were bad or anything like that. I just, I was 18. I wanted to be cool, and I thought I was cool, and had this idea that I was cool. And I was like, I want to shoot cool stuff. I don't want to shoot family, weddings and stuff, whatever. I'm not doing that. I'm too cool. My musical choices, I don't know. I would consider Whitney, your husband, Peter, a very music snob like myself.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of also just other snobbery that goes along with that. And so I just looked at it like that. I did not want to do that type of stuff because I was just too cool. I was like, I listen to Guadalcanal Diary. I'm not going to shoot a wedding, and that's kind of how I was. And
yeah.
And then, but the whole time I was on the annual staff for every junior high school thing all the way through, and I had no idea what I was doing. If you look at my senior annual, I guess yearbook, it's just my friends and me, nobody else. It's just my friends
to take photos of.
Yes.
And me. And I did occasionally use other people in my senior yearbook. So that's kind of how it was. And then at some point, I didn't go to school for it. Didn't go to school for art. I just kept thinking that shooting anything else or any other way. So like if it was music and stuff, I didn't think I could do that in Nashville. I didn't want to shoot country. So it just keeps adding these no's, internal. I wasn't getting told no by anybody else. I wasn't getting told you can't do this by professors or parents or business people or people I looked up to. I wasn't being told no by any of those people. I was telling myself no. And it wasn't because I didn't think I could do it. It was because I didn't know any better. It was just kind of like, you don't know what you don't know. And I guess at some point I decided to take a chance. Like I remember it was like I was around 19 or 20 and I worked at Wolf Camera and Video, which was a big camera like chain that we had years ago.
Did you work on West End?
For a little bit. I did. I had.
Did you know I worked there too for a while? That was like kind of.
No.
Yes.
I love you have all these connections. I know. It's so awesome.
So funny.
We now are both alum of the West End Wolf Camera and Video, but I worked, I worked there and I worked different places.
Yep.
But I knew that at some point I was going to have to make push for it. And, I was looking for advice. I was looking for help. And I remember reaching out to a photographer that shot for the National Geographic, and his name was William Albert Allard. Kodak had just sent a ton of new film into Wolf Camera, and it was called Super Life. And Bill it was like the cover, and then you open it up and he had all the inside photos, and they were kind of doing a partnership with him, I'm pretty sure. And it was just beautiful stuff. And it was always, like everything you would see from National Geographic, but he had such an odd perspective a lot of times. Like he would shoot over like a Peruvian woman's back as she was leaning over to pick up fish off the ground. And somehow those little parka things that they wear were blending into the fish. And it was such an abstract thing. And I kept thinking, wow, abstract is so cool. This is way different than everybody else. And so everything he did had a little edge to it, more so than a lot of the other photographers. A lot of more of the other photographers had more of an ambience to what they were doing.
Uh-huh.
And then I ended up meeting one of those guys too later, and he ended up being kind of a mentor later in my life. But in the early part, I just took a chance in that little Super Life book. They mistakenly put his studio phone number in there. And
then you just called.
It was awesome. Wow. Oh my gosh.
I think I called him on a Friday and he called back on a Monday. And I think he might have thought it was a job or something. That's why he called me back. And I answered the phone and I just asked him if he could give me any piece of advice. I said, Mr. Allard, I know you're busy. I don't want to bother you too much. I just been really impressed and then moved by your photography. I'm 19. If there was a piece of advice you could just give a 19-year-old, what would you say is something that would be the most valuable thing that you could say to somebody like me starting out? And I truly was starting out. I didn't know anything back then. And he said, when I have a job and I'm scheduled to be there from the 17th to the 25th, he said, I'll get there on like the 16th or the 15th, and then I'll stay through the 27th. And he said, for the first 2 days, I'll just take a bag of sandwiches and just go sit in the middle of the town /village/campfire And he says, I'll make these sandwiches and I'll just sit down and not even take the camera with me. I'll just sit in the middle of the town square, the heartbeat of the town. And he says, and so, hour 2, nothing, 3, nothing, 4, 5, 6, about hour 7, 8, first day, maybe sometimes people would start coming to him, not the other way around. And they would come to him and they would, who are you? What are you doing? Would you like to have dinner with us tonight? And he would then get invitations to come to their houses. It was very different, a very different perspective on how to do photojournalism. And he became very close, personal with a lot of these people. And was out. That's how he, as this big Santa Claus looking white guy, was able to have access to some of the poorest parts of America. He did a whole thing on like the third world. Like America still has parts of the country that are very third world.
Yeah.
And he did a whole thing on it. And I can remember him taking a photo of probably a tween or like 12, 13-year-old African-American boy that was on the cover. And it was literally like up close. And you could tell it was done with a 51A because of the shallow depth of field. It wasn't like he stood 50 feet back and took it. You could tell he was just right on them. And I was like, how? And I said, I couldn't believe it. I was like, how did you do that? Not, how do you do that? How do you do that? And that's when he started that story about the sandwiches and everything. And that was how he wanted to do it. And then when he left the town, he stayed in contact with everybody. He had said he had put a couple of kids through school. I know that's been debatable by different people, but anyway, all that to say is that was the best thing that I could have ever heard, because Whitney, you knowing me, like that is the one thing I took in and absorbed, because I knew nothing at that point. So any technical thing would have fallen on deaf ears anyway,
Yep.
And that one thing was, it is about the exchange. It is about the relationships. It is about the feel and the relationships and the touch and all that kind of stuff. And, just how you approach everything. And
we preach about connection, and that is so much of what keeps us, I feel like, doing our jobs and doing what we love to do, is that connection that you feel, the connection that you have with your subjects, and family. Like, I'm a family photographer, the families that I've connected with, and there's just, the photos obviously need to be good too, but the connection, I feel like more oftentimes than not, is what keeps people coming back.
Yeah. And I think, that can go for no matter what kind of photography you're doing, because as photographers, we have a lot of power in telling people's story, and we can make it a positive storytelling experience. And we could also have very poor storytelling experience. And, I think even in terms of wedding photography, making someone feel safe and have that trust in me that I'm going to do my best to make them look their best and be authentic to who they are. They're going to remember that experience even more than the photograph that I took. Because I could take a decent photograph that's not that great, but if they had a wonderful experience doing that, they're going to remember that forever. And so I think that absolutely, that can be, applied to wherever we are. And
well, let's be honest, I'm not the best photographer in the world. And I feel like at some point you've got to come to the grips with the fact that, there's something that's going to have to make up that difference, and it could be personality. Why can't it be personality, or why can't it be people skills or something like that?
Yeah.
And for a lot of us, let me ask you guys a question. How did you did you have struggles in the earliest part of your career with the people skills part of it? Was it hard for you to get that connection or to just talk to people? What did you guys have to deal with?
Oh, Erin, do you have a? I'm going to call
Hold on. Why did Erin go first? I want to know why. Let's straighten Erin on that one.
I've said the same words that just came out of your mouth on a previous episode. I am not the best photographer. I'm not the best senior photographer in the area, but I'm going to make sure that I give them the best experience that I can. I like people. It's not the photography for me that keeps me here, that really got me here. It was just the the connection, the being with people, and I like the art part of it. I like creating in general, but really just I have a job where people look at me and smile all the time. So, it's just, that's what keeps me there. So it wasn't, for me, it wasn't tricky with the communicating part. That was really what came easier to me than the technical side. I really feel like to be 14 years in, I should know more technically than I do. Sometimes I feel like I'm lacking in that department, but I'm still trekking. I'm still in it.
And I want to just even speak to that. I mean, both of you, are like excellent photographers. And I'm, just Erin, I look at your work and it's beautiful. So also don't put yourself, thank you, down. I just want to remind you that you absolutely have skill.
We're always
all I can think about is all I can think about is the people that I look up to. That's what I was thinking was in my mind. I was looking at the people that I look up to, I feel like are the ones that are better than I am. And I think when you get down to it, it's the comparative part of that. That's the wrongest part of that. And that is something that's going to pull you down as your comparison. And man, dude, social media does not make it any easier.
It doesn't. And I think about when you were sharing your story, about how you just were like, why not? This is what I want to do. I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. There is something, I had that same sort of attitude when I was younger. When I was getting started, I was like, I want to do this. I can do it. Why not? I just had this self-confidence at that point in my life. When I look back, I'm like, you don't know what you were thinking about yourself, but, it was that initial drive that I think and risk-taking ability that I had that I don't have now. And I feel like the longer I went, the more I was kind of talked down on myself. Yeah. And especially with social media, you see so much and you're like, oh my gosh, they're so much better than me. Or they have X, Y, and Z. And it's really hard. And it can grow the more you get into the industry because there are too many negative voices, even if it's our own voice, comparing ourselves. So, but I want to touch on Alan, that I love that you just were like, hey, I'm going to call this person. I'm just going to do it. And so if you're starting out, just try it, put yourself out there. You won't be able to make that leap unless you actually, the people that go far are ones that actually do something about it. Yeah. And they might not be the best, but they do it.
It's interesting that, now it would be instead of a phone call or a letter or anything involving a horse, it would be just email or, you know what I mean? Or
slide on into the DMs. That's what you do.
Slide into the DMs. Well, they say, Gary V talks about that a lot. Gary V's hey man, send out 300 messages and see what happens. And if you truly want to know, if you really do like a certain style of for a certain photographer, an artist or whatever, or even, I would even suggest this for business is, always, contact people and just say, I would love to work with you, or I have some questions and, a lot of times now everybody's got, a Patreon and everybody's got a link in the bio below and so you're probably going to get hooked up on a mailing list and or class for something that you may or may not want to do, but just, you don't have to say yes to everything, but you definitely can ask questions. And anyone that is listening or watching, you can definitely call me because I have just that open door policy with that, because I had those same sweet people that did that for me. And so,
awesome.
Yeah. And that's definitely, you can do that. That's no big deal to me. And I just love helping others, but I did have to take that chance. And it was like what you said, Whitney, it's somewhere between courage and foolishness. You know what I mean? It's just somewhere in there, either not knowing any better or just thinking you can.
It's the joy of being 19 years old and you kind of feel I don't know, you're invincible a little bit and that you've got nothing really to lose. There's something really freeing about that. I think about that a lot actually with how like once you've been in your profession for so long, a lot of the times you kind of just keep doing the same thing because it's working. But thinking back to when you first start and how many risks you take and how creative you get because either you don't have the budget to like get all the equipment, maybe you don't have the connections to get all the models or do all the things. And so you're forced to be a little bit more creative. You take a little bit more risk to just kind of figure out what your style is. And I think that is something that's really refreshing about people that are just starting out and new photographers is I don't know, I guess they don't have the fear in them that maybe the rest of us do when we've been in it for a while.
I mean, if you're choosing to like be your own boss and to start a bit, like anybody choosing that is courageous. You're not taking the easy way, like 9 to 5. Let's go to college, get our 4-year degree, and let's do the 9 to 5 to get our health insurance or, the paycheck that you get. That's like, exactly what it's going to be. I mean, all of us, we're all a little bit, maybe a little bit foolish, maybe just a little bit adventurous, but we all know what it's like to be able to be a part of this industry and to do something that we get excited. I mean, all of us are excited about what we're doing.
Yeah.
We all love photography. Even though there may be things we don't love or things may be hard, there's still that passion that we have. And so I think that's why I love photographers so much. I'm always like, I love photographers because we're a little wild. We're a little out there.
We keep hearing about young Alan. I want to hear more about like this 30-year career that you've had. Not old Alan. Well, I mean, we can talk about old Alan if you want, but so 30 years of photography. What can you tell me, for any reason, can you tell me about a session or a shoot or a personal project or something that like stands out in your mind that was either like super crazy or that you're super proud of? Let's have some story time. I put you on the spot.
Let's put me on the spot. And it's, what the biggest thing is, it's actually hard to choose. There's been so many that have affected me in so many different ways, like photos that like shoots that will just make you cry. And like, and it's, things like, somebody that's been in an abusive situation, you're shooting in a crowd and they've asked you to not shoot their photograph, like that kind of stuff. Or it's been, like having to cover, and I'm not a photojournalist. I'm too much of a softie to be a journalist, but I have found myself in situations where I've had to do it because it had to get done, or it was for a magazine that wasn't a photojournalism magazine, but they still were trying to get me to do a story about something, and I had to go cover all of the families of survivors for the Oklahoma City bombing. And so I am not a photojournalist. I feel sorry for photojournalists, actually. They had said for the longest time, I don't know if it's still true or not, but that was like it was very, very high suicide rate was in photojournalism as a profession. And it's just because of this. Yeah. And I don't know if that's still true. It may be different now, but that it changed for a while. And they had given a few examples of photographers in the situations, but it's just tough. I mean, absorbing this type of stuff is so hard. And I am empath at best and a 2 on the Enneagram. And it's just like so difficult to try to be in the moment and not let it get over on top of you. And like having to do that type of stuff. So there's been moments that are like that. It is both fun and not fun, and it's been difficult. I mean, there's been times I've walked into crime scenes and I've had to photograph, I had to photograph a guy once for a magazine that was a forensic detective and a forensic photographer and just stuff. So
wow.
The ones to me that are profound are the ones that I love the most, is you show up on a shoot with one expectation and you leave with a different one. That to me is the amazing thing. Like you go in thinking this one thing about this person and then you leave and you're completely moved. And to me, I think one that is I always listed as one of my favorites only because I wasn't much of a Beatles fanatic, but I was able to photograph the producer of all the Beatles records except the last 2. His name was Sir George Martin. He was actually knighted. And I was only supposed to have a few hours with him, but ended up spending most of the day with him. And I think it was the thought of me being facilitated by the same person that facilitated the Beatles. I didn't, when I went into the shoot, I didn't think about it. And then I had bought at the time this thing called the Anthology. It was just all of their history, the early, middle, and late career. And I was on another shoot. I was on the way to another shoot. I was shooting for Wired magazine, and it was this amazing new process in Mississippi. And I was on the way down, driving the car on the way down with all the equipment in it. And on the way down there, and I put the Anthology 3 in, and I just kept hearing George Martin's voice over and over, directing them, telling them, asking them how do you want to do this? Maybe you should switch to guitar. What do you think about this? And you just kept hearing his voice over, and it just hit me what I had done, like months later, what I had photographed, who I had worked with. And it did not hit me at the time. I think I prepared for it, and there were some amazing moments. And one of those amazing moments is just the fact that everything I'd planned was great. I loved it, but he just leaned out a window. He was drinking tea near a window, then leaned out the window. And the name of his record at the time, he had put out one last record, and it was called In My Life. And it was one of the Beatles songs, In My Life. And he asked all these like comedians to come in and just mess up the Beatles songs, because he did comedy records before he did the Beatles records. And so he had Goldie Hawn, Jim Carrey, Robin Williams, everybody come in and just completely mess up the Beatles songs. And he did it on purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was terrible. It was a terrible record. but it, cause they was, them just having a good time, and it wasn't necessarily trying to be tack on with music or anything like that. Sure. But the shot, of him looking out the window completely defines In My Life. They ended up using it when he accepted, and this is way before social media and phones and all this type of stuff. And I would have given anything for this photo. But when he accepted I think he accepted a lifetime Grammy, in the, I believe it's, Whitney, you may know this. I don't know it. NARAS, I think, is what the Grammy Association is called, I think. And they paid me for my photo to be on the stage while he accepted his Grammy. And so that's awesome. Is just, and no photo of that, no social media of that, Yeah.
Yeah. So you got paid for them to use your photo.
Yeah. The Grammys paid me to use his.
See, photographers remember that.
Yeah.
Remember that. People need to pay you for your photos.
Everything. None of this, they need to pay you for most things. Okay.
Yes. Yes. None of this, like, the Grammys wasn't like, hey, we'll give you good.
This is good exposure. This is good exposure for you.
Well, thanks. I'm going to go grab a sandwich with that exposure dollars. That
yes. My mortgage company really loves when I just send that. I just like write them a little note. This is like, I'm going to pay you with my exposure. Here we go.
Well, and you know what? Because I talk about this exposure stuff, exposure bucks a lot. And there is some leverage with exposure, actually. There is some leverage that you can use as a strategy for yourself. And that can be good, but it can only last a little while. And it can only be if you get something back from it. And now, knowing what I know about content creation and that type of thing, or influencers, let's say you do choose to work with an influencer or content creation, and they're like, you're going to get a great exposure out of it. And they do say that. Well, as photographers, you need to write down what you want. This is what I want from you. I want you to post 5 times. I want you to tag me in each and invite me as a collaborator in Instagram and wherever else that will happen. And you need to state your terms, and you need to very clearly, because if this is going to be for free, then this is what I need out of it. Mm-hmm. And that's what you need to do. And so start doing that kind of stuff. If this is true and you're going to do it, then that leverage needs to work both ways, because they think just them showing up in your photos is enough. And it's not. Cause just remember that as creators, we have the leverage every single time. And let me tell you something about the legal part of this. You are 100% protected. It's the easiest thing actually to win in lawsuits. I don't know if you know that or not. But copyright infringement is one of the easiest things to win because of metadata or invoicing or both. So you photographers, you have a lot of power. And in fact, you have all the leverage, and do not think for a second that just because that person may know more people than you do, that doesn't mean anything. Nothing. You have all the leverage and the power. Don't ever forget it.
I want to stand up and cheer.
Nothing's stopping you, Whitney. Do it.
It's true. Yay. It is true. I think we just give it away. We don't even know the power that we have.
Yeah.
That's silliness. And if you have questions about any of that stuff, contact any one of us and we'll tell you exactly how much power you have,
Yeah.
But it's a lot. And I hate seeing people do this stuff because it's useless. I mean, they just give away free. And then that hurts actually. What you're doing by giving away free things, free sessions is hurting you and it's hurting us too, because now everybody just thinks they don't have to pay for anything. Mm-hmm. And that's killing us. It's killing the industry,
Yeah. Yep. Man, this is such a good segue. And I feel like I had so much we could keep talking about. But right, I want to hear what you're doing right now. And I know you're doing some coaching because even right now I'm like, okay, Alan is I feel built up. I feel ready to go out and do my thing. And
exactly. We can conquer the world now that we're talking to Alan. I love it.
Yes. And so you do offer this.
Yes.
So I guess, I mean, what I would love to hear is what kind of you're working on now. And I want to hear all about this, the coaching that you're doing. Because obviously this just comes natural to you.
It does, and I love it, and it's because I love it. I think it's because I love it, and it's knowledge that should be shared, and everyone needs to be confident in their work, and stop looking at it as a competitive thing. Even though there's nothing wrong with competition, there's nothing wrong with it. It's okay to want to be better than someone. It's not okay to want to rub their faces in it. It's okay to look up to your heroes. It's not okay to always look up to your heroes and put ourselves down. And so you've got to know the boundary on that, right? And to me, I love helping others because it just makes me feel good and it makes me feel like a part of the community and feel like I'm actually contributing instead of, because we say the word take photos a lot, and this is more like give photos. That's a phrase.
I love that. That's really fun. I love give photos.
And I feel like that's just a part of contributing, and we all do need to contribute because there's no reason for you to, once you have success, to just hoard it to yourself. And a lot of us, when you figure out something that's working for you, there's no reason for you not to share that with people that cannot figure out what's not working for them. Yeah. And I think the thing that I see that's the saddest thing is there's the beginning stage. Everybody's excited. And then they start getting a little bit of money, and then they're like, well, I'm doing this part-time. And then they do a little bit more, and then they start buying equipment, and they're very curious about what equipment to get. They start looking around for help. They don't really get it. And so the deposits start going into a bank that's not actually there. You know what I mean? And they can't get a lot of their questions answered. And then they get to a little bit further along, and they kind of build their own strategy, not knowing any better, not knowing what they don't know. They fall into the loop of more money, or they fall into the loop of feeding ego. Mm-hmm. And at some point, I would say for 95% of us, not all of us, that's going to come crashing down on you at some point. Mm-hmm. And I don't talk about more money, but I do love to talk about better money. Mm-hmm. I don't want everyone to think that there is a glass ceiling, because that's what ends up happening. You end up hitting a ceiling on yourself, and you're either not charging enough or you're not happy enough. And you're not happy with your work and the way it looks, or you're not happy with the money that you're not making or that you are making. And that is directly connected to your confidence. That is directly connected to who you are and how you present yourself. And it's okay. It's okay to get there, because we all get there. And it's okay to want out, but I see people do this all the time. Whitney, Amanda, Erin, you guys see this happen too. You start making a ton of money. Woo! You know what I mean? Woo! And then you are overloaded with 35 to 55 weddings. You start having to get help from people. You're burned out. Then all of a sudden the word bridezilla becomes bigger for some reason, or anything Zilla. And you know what I mean? And you've let it become something it shouldn't have become, because the boundary that you didn't put up, because we all talk about, like, people ask me today, well, Alan, why did you even own a wedding brand? You were doing celebrity this and music that and blah, blah. I was working for rap magazines. And why do you have a wedding brand? And I was just like, well, I'm an old softie. I love love. I love getting paid. What did you say earlier about getting paid to have people smile at you all day?
Yeah. It's my job. People look at me and smile all day long. Yeah.
I love that. What is wrong with that? And you're getting paid to go to a party.
Yeah.
And sometimes drink a little bit, but not too much. And
Never.
It's a party and you're getting paid for all this stuff and it's fun and people are happy and they're smiling and they're crying and you're there for a huge important day. There's nothing wrong with that. So how does that go bad? Well, frustration. You don't like what you're doing. You haven't made the right decisions. You're not charging enough. Something creeps in and then it just goes south. And then here's what happens. Everybody gets busy and they level it. And then they just hit this little middle space where they're ready to go to the next space and they stop, they get burned out and they quit and they walk away. And I hate seeing that. I hate people quitting. How many times have we seen people do 55 weddings and then quit the following year?
I mean, Alan, like that was me. And I shared about that recently on one of the episodes. And yeah, I like let myself get burnt out and I just kept going for way too long. Oof. And then I just like quit weddings. I did. And I didn't pick up a camera for 6 months at least. Yeah.
Wow.
And I heard it said recently, I may have shared it on a recent episode or maybe it's just swimming in my head, but I heard someone say burnout is a good thing. It's okay if you reach burnout. It doesn't mean it's the end of anything. It means that you've learned your boundaries. You've learned what doesn't work for you. You've learned what you don't want to keep doing. You've learned what doesn't feel good. And then now you just correct it and you make changes. And I loved that idea that like, it's not burnout and stop. It's burnout and fix it. But I love the idea of having a coach to help you because I love that you've said more than once, you don't know what you don't know. 100%. That's why we're here. To help all the listeners kind of learn what we wish we had known, back when we were 15 and 18 and 19 and 22 and starting businesses. Yeah.
Even you could throw social media and promoting and, SEO and all this type of stuff in there too, because we have this idea AI is taking over and all this type of stuff. And there's a languaging that's happening in the questions that you ask and what you expect as an answer. And we get so locked in on, is it going to be this or this? Is it going to be money or art? Is it going to be happiness or sadness? And it's not. It's actually and. It's, especially with AI. Is this going to replace us? Is it going to be digital photography or AI? And I'm like, no, I think it's going to be you and. And I think that's what's going to happen because all of us, you forget something. And that the thing you forget is that, and you guys have seen this when you on Instagram and everywhere else, if you look at AI, it all has this creepy similarity to it, because and I'll just be honest with you. If you go back and you start digging into all this stuff with AI, they're called foundation models and they only have like 3 or 4. Now there's starting to be more foundation models, but these foundation models is how they were able to build this stuff in coding. And when you, feed it the same, or you feed these same 3 foundation models, the same information, or at least similar information, it spits out the same looking stuff. So this gets back to creation again and having your own voice and everything, even if it's just in your own voice in your own world, is that you are the creator and you feed this foundation model and it's always going to be that way. And maybe, I don't know if robots are going to take over or not. I don't really care, but there's a higher chance that you're going to be working alongside something that may aid you. And that's how I'm using AI right now is I'm actually using it to aid me because I didn't like this photo quite as much as I would like to have. And so I'm adding something to the photo or taking something away from the photo that I don't like. And it's my aid. It's working with me, not against me. It's your
tool. Exactly. Yeah. It's your tool.
If you guys only knew how many times like, oh, I'm shooting ring light now, or oh, I'm this, or there's all these little things that have come down the pike year after year. There's another thing. And all I can think about is just another tool in the arsenal. It's still not a or, it's an and. You know?
Yeah, which I feel like is where all that, I mean, circling back, that's where all the connection comes from, is you have all these tools and you have them at your disposal. And that's great if you can use them and you can try them out and you can test what you like and what you don't. But at the end of the day, it's that connection that you make with somebody. And that's going to scream louder than any tool that you have.
Yeah,
absolutely. And, it's interesting because I've started moving more into the social media space with storytelling, only because I'll just give you the forecast for larger advertising jobs and larger music jobs and larger, I guess, branding jobs and stuff like that. What's happened over the last 3 to 5 years is that now CEOs, CMOs, CFOs are now seeing that their social media departments are now putting out things too. They don't have enough to do, and to feed the beast, they have to end up shooting a lot of product, whether it's e-commerce, things on a white background or whatever. And they're tasking them with shooting some of the bigger stuff. And now they get those results back. Does not look as good as what we could do, us, or of us, but it's close enough. And they're like, okay, fine. And they're just canceling out these bigger shoots. And so that's what's happening. It's not a good forecast. It's a little bit like Napster did to music. But the thing that's always going to win out every single time is idea. And if you can be an idea person and you can take the risk of putting your ideas into your photography, this is how people will always come to you. It's always going to be that, is what idea can I get out? And the idea could just be that I want you to look pretty, that I want you to look amazing, that I want this to have a candid feel to it. And that type of thing. It doesn't have to be, you have to create something from nothing or that you've got to reinvent the wheel. It actually just needs to be that you do come loaded with ideas and you are willing to take the risk to show those ideas in front of your clients and friends.
Yeah, man, this is so good. We didn't even get a chance to talk about your projects you have going on. However, I do think it will be great to maybe show some of these on our Instagram. It'll be a great place to share a lot of this. I want to end with this last question because we have a pretty hard cut off, I guess. Hard chop. So Alan, if you could start your business over again today, what would you do different? Just pick one thing.
I guess I would probably just focus on the things that I love. And I'm already kind of doing that, but like I'm going to double down on it. That's what I'm going to do right now, because I think we have even a tendency to go through phases of confidence where you've had a lot of confidence at the beginning, and then you got the reality, and then you had, and so and I'm just going to double down on the things that I love, I think, and go with that first. And then, and that's probably what I'm going to do, because what I love is story, and I love to tell stories. And so, showing more of that is probably what I would do.
Yeah. I love that. That's awesome.
I love it too. I wish we had 7 more hours to just sit.
I know. I feel like this just means we need to have Alan back on again. I
have no problem. No problem coming back. And I've thought about this too. We could also do something to where we had a little workshop-y type thing, maybe, or even online.
Yeah.
Or I need to get back to this place again, because I've spent like pandemic and otherwise too much time away from it. I'm ready.
Yep. That's awesome.
In 100%.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
We'll do it for sure. Alan, let our listeners know where they can find you.
Well, it's pretty easy. It's just www blah, 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 AlanClarkPhotography.com. I don't know why I think I need to say the www. I do this all the time. AlanClarkPhotography.com. And it's pretty much that everywhere. That might be the oldest man thing I did today. But it's just Alan Clark Photography everywhere you go, whether it's on Instagram or TikTok. And and I've got most everything. There's link in every bio and all that, yada, yada. But the next thing that I want to be doing is focusing on YouTube, because that's kind of the last thing for me I've got to really focus on. That's it. And you can find all my stuff in all of those places.
Awesome. And we're going to have all of his information linked on our YouTube and on our website, theeditweekly.com. And so make sure you're following us on Instagram as well. Like and hit that little bell on our YouTube, and it will let you know when we are release a new video. So we're so much fun. I'm so glad you got to join us, Alan. It was great to see you.
We had a good time. You guys are amazing.
Just making a stand up and applaud. I know Whitney wanted to stand up and applaud earlier.
I did.
Thank
you. This has been amazing.